Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, I want to thank everybody today for attending. Michael and I talk pretty regularly, and as you see in the last 2 or 3 press releases and over the last several months, there's been quite a bit happening with Cymat. Michael takes a very proactive stance with his shareholders, potentially interested shareholders. So we try to typically get out there and put you in front of Michael at a somewhat regular basis, so I can kind of hear from the horse's mouth what's happening. Just for the record, I am a very large shareholder of Cymat. I've been working with Michael for many, many years. Have tremendous faith in the company's ability. They're now operating in about 8-10 different verticals, advanced discussions along the way in the bulk of those verticals. So I think it's a very exciting time, and I think the future is brighter than ever for Cymat. So I just want to also say that although Michael will handle and run this call, we do have his longtime partner, Daryl Klebaum, I know is on the call. CFO of Cymat. Michael and Daryl have worked together for a long, long time. Daryl's been instrumental and a tremendous asset to the company, operating effectively and very pragmatically in conjunction with Michael on money matters, which is why his company's been able to really effectively utilize their funds to match with the opportunities that have unfolded for a company with, somewhat limited breadth. On that note, I'll hand it over to Mr. Liik. Michael, thank you for your time, and we're excited to get an update on what's happening. And as Jan had mentioned, if you can please email us any questions. If we don't have time to answer all the questions, we will ensure that Michael does answer them and email them to you, because we want to keep timelines reasonable. So on that note, Michael, thank you again for taking the time to join us, and I'll hand it over to you to update us.
Thank you, Neil. And welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time today to hear this. What I'm going to do is provide some context and maybe a little more meat on the bone with respect to the corporate update that we provided a couple of weeks ago. And it's a good opportunity to speak to shareholders that I maybe don't speak to as much as others. So again, as Neil said, if you can hold off with your questions to the end, I'd be happy to answer those as well. So I'm going to be following the format of the press release that we put out in terms of the initiatives we have in our principal verticals, and not really go into an overview about the company. I'm assuming that everybody who's joined has a fairly good sense of what we do. So in that vein, I'll start with Smart Metal, and particularly, sorry, you've got illusion there. We'll start with Smart Metal, thank you. We'll start with Smart Metal and automotive. That's really our key strategic initiative for the company. And we've been working diligently at this for a number of years, but I would say that most actively in the last 2 years. And the reason for that is that there's a revolution in the automotive area, as most of you know, and that's the electrification of vehicles. That's made our material particularly relevant because lightweighting of vehicles is absolutely paramount. As you know, range, which is a key criteria for electric vehicles, and a marketing criteria, is extremely important, and range and weight correlate very closely. Just by way of background, most of you probably don't know this, but an electric vehicle is a very, very heavy vehicle, and that's principally because of the battery. The battery itself can weigh as much as internal combustion engine sedans. So that makes any opportunity around the battery particularly interesting for the OEMs, car makers, that is, to reduce weight. So we have specifically targeted that area of the vehicle because we see lots of opportunity to take weight out of that area. Typically today, these batteries are protected through brute force. In other words, high strength steel encasement. Lots of problems with that. The first of which, of course, is they're very heavy. They can weigh as much as 500-600 pounds. They're quite expensive because of the type of steel they use. And probably most importantly, they don't absorb any of the impact of energy or the event itself. The energy is largely translated into the battery cells. So with that in mind, we have focused principally, I would say almost exclusively, on the battery box and how we can take weight out of that. So we've announced a couple of things already, programs that we're working on. I'll start with our most exciting one and most advanced, and that's with a new electric EV company. And what we're doing there is we're replacing the bottom strike plate of the battery, which is currently designed with a high-strength steel plate. And we're replacing it with a proprietary aluminum foam sandwich. So we've developed a very thin, high-density foam to go into the sandwich. It has aluminum sheets on both sides. And again, the purpose of this is to take out weight, to be less expensive, and to absorb energy of impact. So where we are with that particular program is that we have completed the design, and the OEM parts, or the OEM, the car company, has signed off on that. So what we're doing is we're building prototypes for this component, and we're testing them at a facility in the US, an automotive certified facility in the US. So that is ready to go. We are testing those in August. I believe August 14th is the date that we're starting. And we are testing several sort of iterations of that. And I'll get into that in a moment as to why we're doing that. But we expect those test results to be available by the end of August. And then we'll, of course, share those with the OEM. And we would expect with that particular OEM that at that point, we would begin negotiations on a serial production contract. The size of that contract, we're expecting about 46,000 units. So there are 2 of these units per vehicle. You know, the value is in the range of $10 million a year for us. That's the starting volume. We like that size because it lets us sort of walk before we run with respect to getting into the automotive industry, which is a very, very challenging industry to be in because of the sort of the requirements for quality and what have you. So that is going very well. As I said, we should have our test results by end of August, then start negotiations with the OEM. Probably as exciting for us with respect to that component is that we own the rights to this. It's how we negotiated this particular contract, development contract. And it is relevant to virtually every electric vehicle company today. As I said earlier, by and large, these electric batteries are protected through brute force. So, I mean, that means high strength steel encasements. By introducing lightweight sandwich structures to it, as I said, it has relevance to literally every car company. So that is going very well, and we're quite optimistic about the test results, and we will keep you informed as to how that goes. On the automotive front, we also have announced 2 programs with a global OEM. They're going well. They're not going as quickly as we would have liked, and I think the OEM would have liked, but I would say that that is largely attributable to turmoil within that OEM. They're going through some restructuring, which has affected timelines and what have you. But the 2 components that we're working on currently, one is a cross member that's in an existing box. We are replacing, or we being tasked with designing a replacement component for that box. Again, it is an aluminum foam sandwich structure that we're replacing a very complex high-strength steel structure with. We have accomplished everything that they've asked us to do. That is to decrease weight, to be able to absorb energy, and most importantly, decrease cost. So we've done our work. We are waiting on the OEM to go to the next step. And as I said, we are very hopeful that we're able to get through the internal turmoil at that OEM and some of the politics involved and be able to move forward with that. That is a very large opportunity for us, given the volume of electric vehicles associated with that particular platform. The other is a rocker panel that we're working with for another platform with this OEM. That is advancing. As I said, has been some restructuring in that OEM. So we had hoped already to be at the prototyping stage with that, but we are hopeful that that will come imminently for us. With respect to this OEM, I guess I can say that they've bought into aluminum foam as a material, particularly for their electric vehicles. So we are expecting a number of additional programs to come imminently. They've talked to us about 2 additional programs. They all are around the battery box, which suits us very well in our material. And we also, with respect to our first component that I talked about before, we're just in the process of setting up a presentation to their technical team to pitch them on that sandwich structure underplate. They have expressed some interest in that, and so that will go ahead sometime later in August. And we also are expecting to, or are already starting to go back to our automotive OEM and parts company network and to promote that product as well. That's unusual because we have complete rights to that product and gives us complete freedom to go and market that to our other OEM and tier 1, 2 parts company partners. We are currently working with a number of tier 1s and OEMs. We're not far enough along yet to make announcements with those, but they are moving along well. So we expect to be expanding our universe of automotive opportunities in the near future. And as I said, we are focusing principally on the battery box, which we believe is most suited to our material and low-hanging fruit, so to speak. That's automotive. I'll move on to military. We've been working in the military space for many, many years, as those of you who have been shareholders for a while know. Our material is particularly well suited for blast mitigation. In other words, if you think of an explosion, most people think of an explosion as all the shrapnel and whatever is in the bomb coming out of the ground or out of the bomb and then penetrating surfaces and what have you. Our material is okay with that, but it's principally used for the impulse or the blast wave that precedes all of that. Solid materials are not well suited to mitigate the force of that blast wave, whereas our material, which is a cellular material, which is mostly air, is particularly effective at reducing that particular threat to military vehicles. So going back to our press release, we've been working with an Asian military contractor for many, many years. We have finalized design with them. We have sent probably about 15 kits over already for low rate production as they ramp up to supply their customer. Their initial customer is their own country's military, and they have a fleet in around 700 vehicles. And they have already been we've announced, and they are in low rate production for that particular vehicle. Where we are with them right now is we're just in the final stages of negotiating a serial production contract, which will cover about half the fleet of 700 vehicles. And it will start to ramp up the end of this calendar year. And that's about a 3-year contract for us. And that in terms of quantum, that's several $1 million a year of kits. And we expect that to accelerate as the years go on and they complete their fleet. I think I've mentioned this before, but the real opportunity with that Asian contractor is that this vehicle is used by several military organizations around the world, including the US, Canada, French, the UK, South Africans. It's quite a prolific vehicle. And the real opportunity is take up by those militaries of the kits, the upgrade kits to these vehicles. That opportunity for us is in the $50 to $100 million range. We're already starting to see marketing efforts on our customers' part by virtue of getting test kits that are for different iterations or variants of this particular vehicle, which we know are for other military organizations. So that is continuing nicely. As I said, we expect to see ramp up early in the next calendar year, several $1 million a year, and growing from that. The other major area that we're participating in military are called multi-threat panels. So the way the military is moving is that they want these Lego-like structures where they have panels that can protect against blast, of course, shrapnel, electromagnetic pulse. They need to have insulating capabilities, sound absorption capabilities. So these are very flexible panels. And we've been working with one particular company for several years in developing their panel. They have a couple of variants of this particular panel. The first variant has now been approved or certified by the US military for use. We are just waiting for the certification or the certification process to begin, which is scheduled to begin in August. And that would, upon successful testing, certify the other variant, which is the main variant that the US military is interested in. Once that is certified, we are expecting military orders with respect to these panels to start ramping up dramatically. We expect it to be in the multiple millions in terms of these panels and growing substantially from that. Other activities in military, those of you who have been shareholders for a while may remember that we were working with Nobel Sport out of France, who's a munitions company, developing non-lethal bullets. And essentially they were using very light aluminum foam cylinders to replace rubber. They're much more predictable in terms of how they behave. They're not susceptible to weather in terms of when you're very hot, very cold, it doesn't affect it. So the use of these are much more predictable. So a number of years ago, we were certified with this design, or Nobel Sport was certified with this design with the French military, who were going to be their kickoff customer. They got certification, and then for whatever reason, it went quiet. And lo and behold, about a month ago, we got a request for quote for 25,000 cylinders, which would result in 25,000 bullets, and destined for the French military. And our customer believes that they are now ready to adopt this particular variant of the non-lethal bullet. And it opens up what we had hoped at the time to be a substantial vertical for us in terms of foam sales. This particular order is a couple of $100,000. The cylinders sell for $7 or $8 each. So it's a very high margin program for us. And as I said, we are looking forward to that. Other areas in military, we continue to investigate areas. We're not actively marketing per se, but we're approached frequently by military organizations around the world. US military is interested in body armor, for example. These are just examples of what we're dealing with our material. An Asian military is looking for threat panels as well. So we try to qualify these first because we do have limited technical resources. But some of these opportunities look very interesting to us. So military is still very much in our sights, and we are expecting it to grow nicely and to start to ramp up with significant volumes this year. Nuclear is another area that we have been in for many, many years. Our traditional application for nuclear are what we call mattresses. So we sit at the base of elevators that take spent rods out of reactors. They get transported into these elevators, and then these elevators take them very deep underground for either semi-permanent or permanent storage. So we are designed as the last line of defense in case those elevators fail. That's been an interesting application for us. It hasn't been a particularly high volume application, but it's been steady business for us. What we're seeing now is through our distributor in France, Nuvia Group, who are one of the largest nuclear contractors, certainly in France, if not the world, is other applications for our material. So we have very recently quoted on applications for protecting the facilities and for seismic protection of columns within new nuclear facilities. So we are expecting a significant multi-million-dollar order, a multi-million-dollar order. We are expecting to receive that sometime in early September. The last step in that particular contract is our customer Nuvia, who's expected to be here in August to do an audit of our process, because we are entering into a much higher volume relationship with them, and that necessitates an audit. So we don't expect anything to come out of that, and that is the final step before we expect to really significantly ramp up nuclear opportunities. Moving to Illusion. Illusion, as you know, has been our legacy product. It's our architectural product. We have been at this for many, many years. Principally, what we do in Illusion are cladding systems. So exterior cladding, some interior cladding systems. Those are the larger volume applications. But it's also a very cool design material. So we'll do ceiling tiles, we'll do sort of design features within buildings, that sort of thing. So in the last 2 years, we have restructured Illusion and resourced it very differently. So for the first, say, 8-10 years of our sort of Illusion development period, we used only agents. It was a very low-cost model, very little support, agents, distributors, that sort of thing. We now have resourced it very differently. We have senior resource in the US, senior resources in Europe, and it's managed professionally from Toronto with inside sales help, and as I said, lots of technical support. So we have a bigger budget for advertising. It's mostly digital advertising, and we support our agents and distributors much more comprehensively than we have. So what that has led to is, coming into this fiscal year, a record pipeline north of $8 million, which is very significant for us. And what we like is we're seeing very significant quoting activity, ramped up very significantly from years ago, but even from last year. And quoting activity correlates highly with end sales results. So we're very happy about that. We did come through a period where we were concerned about the state of the construction industry and possible recession globally. And we experienced that at Cymat because we saw delays in very major projects last fiscal year. Those seem to have now corrected themselves. A number of large projects we have now, one we have shipped, another number of them we expect to resume or get POs for them early in this year. So we are expecting Illusion to do very well for us coming into this year. Finally, many years ago, we announced a joint venture with a Spanish company, Coil. That has been delayed significantly, and that's principally because we are working to perfect a part of that technology. We're working with NRC and supported by Rio Tinto, who is our material supplier. And they have completed the first phase of the work and are about to commence with the second phase. We are expecting them to be successful. When they are successful, then we hope to resume product trials with our partner in Spain. And that, as I've said before, we expect to be a very significant vertical for us. Now, for those of you who don't know, these are brazed sandwich panels. So instead of gluing aluminum sandwich panels together, we would use our material as the substrate in the middle and braze them together. And the purpose for that is that it provides for first of all, a much stiffer panel. And secondly, because it's brazed together, it would have a much higher fire rating. So we are, as I said, expecting the second phase of that to commence imminently. And when that is done, we will hopefully resume product trials in Spain, where a plant has already been constructed. That concludes the update on our business. I would be happy to answer questions from any participants. And I turn it back to you, Neil, for that.
Thank you, Michael. So we did get some questions via email. For anyone else who has questions, please send it to the chat directly to me or send it to us at info@investor3.ca. So Michael, the first question for you is, how many automotive companies or auto part companies is Cymat Technologies currently engaged in negotiations with at various stages, whether early or late?
Yes, we deal with a number of OEMs and parts companies. I would say that it's probably shy of 10, but certainly north of 5 that we have active discussions with. We have to be a little bit careful because to take on these automotive development programs that we take on require a significant amount of engineering resource. Most of that engineering design resource comes from our partner Tesseract in the US. They are the drivers. We support them. There are limitations to how much work they can take on. Tesseract also assists us with some of our military initiatives and other very, very technical design initiatives. But having said that, with that caveat, we are dealing with, as I said, certainly between north of 5 and less than 10 OEMs and parts companies. Most of them, as I said, are focused around the battery box. We're trying to stay focused as an organization because we are a small group. And we find that our material right now has most efficacy around the battery box. That's not to say that other crash mitigation components and whatnot aren't relevant to our initiatives, but right now we are focusing almost exclusively on the battery box.
Perfect. Assuming success in your initiatives, what are the working capital requirements and how will you finance this?
Yes, that's an excellent question. As I said, we're careful in how many we take on because they are both human resource and finance intensive, and we share that burden with our partners. How we plan to continue is our strategy has always been from the beginning that we plan to generate sufficient cash flow from our legacy business, particularly our Illusion business, which is a very high margin business for us. And that not only covers our overheads and what have you, but generates free cash flow for us to continue these initiatives. That's a primary source of cash or of resources that, or where our resources come. We do private placements on occasion. We just completed a repricing of our warrants that were expiring, and that brought in some capital. But we do rely principally on the cash flow generated from our legacy business. We expect that to expand this year, certainly with nuclear, with multi-million-dollar orders imminently coming in, and with military starting to ramp up, particularly with our Asian contracts starting to generate revenues. These are all very high margin products for us that generate strong cash flow. So if all goes according to plan, then we should be able to finance these strategic initiatives in automotive from the cash flow coming from our business. Of course, we need a little luck as well. We need the timing for these orders to come in to work in our favor, unlike last year. But with a little bit of luck, that will come through for us.
Perfect. Upon startup of phase 2 of the NRC brakes panel research, how long until it would be completed?
That's an excellent question. I don't have a good answer for you, principally because when you're in the hands of the government, it's principally NRC who are driving this. You have very little control over the timing. The good news, of course, is we don't have to use our own resources to or deploy our own resources to further this initiative. The bad news is we are in the capable hands of our government. As I said, the first phase has been completed successfully. Second phase is expected to commence imminently. I can't realistically tell you when that'll be completed. I'm hoping a couple of months, but that's just speculation on my part.
Perfect. In reference to the sizable contract Cymat Technologies is currently working on in the nuclear sector, what specific products or services did Cymat provide that contributed to a larger scale of contract compared to the previous contracts you were working on, which were smaller? Additionally, do you have plans to pursue more contracts of this size? Could you kind of expand on that market opportunity?
Yes.
Well, he muted himself.
Sorry, is that, did I unmute?
There? Yeah, you're perfect.
Honestly, I didn't mute. It was somebody muted on my behalf, but I was starting to say that we work with a very large, sophisticated distributor who does the design work. So we assist them with technical support and what have you. And really, they're looking for options for our material and have developed these new products. The nature of these products are such that the volumes are going to be significantly larger. And I think that's going to continue. We were very optimistic in terms of the size of the opportunity there, just because when you're protecting nuclear facilities, obviously the volume of foam is going to be considerably larger than producing mattresses, at the base of elevators. So this opens up an entirely new area for us, and both our distributor and Cymat see a very bright future in this. And this is, as I may have mentioned before, they white label our product. So they're very engaged with us and with the material in promoting it. And we have a great partner. What can I tell you? We are expecting that to ramp up very nicely for us.
That's very exciting. Upon successful testing of the multi-thread panels or the battery box products, what CapEx would be required for each product? Even if the CapEx is self-funding, I expect 2 separate US-based facilities would be required.
Yes, I mean, we have capacity within our plant, our existing plant in Toronto or in Mississauga, of, depending on the SKUs, somewhere top line in the $75 to $100 million range. So we've made significant improvements both in quality and capacity over the past 2 years into the plant. So we don't see limitations in the short term in providing the materials that they will need. Interestingly, when we first engaged with them, they mentioned that ultimately, because we're dealing with the US military, they were going to expect us to build a plant in the US to supply primarily out of the US. That hasn't been an issue for these initial orders that we're seeing. And as I said, we have plenty of capacity in our Mississauga plant. We want to fill that capacity before we expand any capacity into the US. I think more reasonably in the automotive business, we'll probably be looking, if we're doing any expansion, to build in the US a plant that would be closer to wherever the assembly facilities are. But even with respect to automotive, the initial contract that we're looking at with the new electric vehicle company, we can handle that volume within our plant.
Perfect. Current cash on balance sheet and burn. Do you need to strengthen balance sheet to win any contracts?
Well, every early stage company looks for a more robust balance sheet so that they both have a little bit of cushion with respect to their operations. And in our case, most importantly, when auto companies or other key customers are auditing our capabilities, they also look at our financial capability. So it's important for us to have a reasonably robust balance sheet. As I've mentioned in my overview, we are expecting sales to ramp up quite significantly this year in the various verticals that we're in. If they all come to pass, and the timing of those are as we are predicting, then we feel reasonably confident. The question, of course, is we don't dictate the timing of when these ramp ups start. So we are dependent on our customers with respect to when those POs start.
Governments are notoriously slow in paying for production, 4 to 6 months. Please discuss the working capital required for military versus automotive customers.
Yes. Well, I'll start with what I really like, which is sort of the terms that we get for our Illusion product. And that's why it's been such an attractive legacy product for us. We don't take any orders or start any orders until we get a very substantial deposit. And depending on the order and how much customization there is, it's anywhere from 1/3 to a half of the value of the purchase order that we get up front. And then nothing leaves our dock until it's fully paid for. We've learned the hard way over years that when you're dealing with one-offs, you need to be paid before they get the product. So what that means for us is that we actually have positive working capital effects from our Illusion business. Don't know that we are going to be able to do that with automotive. Automotive has very defined terms. So we will need working capital with respect to automotive. Military, we are able to get deposits for our military business, which cover off a significant portion of our costs. And depending on who we're dealing with and how we negotiate the contracts, by and large, we won't ship anything until it's paid for. So the working capital requirements of growing the sales part of our business in these verticals, they're not a burden to us just because of how we structure our business. Automotive, we're still a little bit a ways in terms of supplying them. That will be different. I would expect that at that point, we can put more traditional financing or secure more traditional financing avenues for our business other than just equity when we have serial production contracts. So I would expect that most of that working capital can be financed with senior bank debt.
Thank you, Michael. Cognizant of time, we are going to end the question period here. Thank you, everyone, for joining.